Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with JcrOffroad. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to install our Bronco rear lower control arm skids. So obviously these are designed to slip over the factory lower control arm mount here on the frame and add protection along the front and bottom edge of this from any obstacles. But before we can get these bolted into place, specifically here on the passenger side, you're going to encounter a bracket from the factory bolted up in here that needs to be removed. To get that bracket removed and how you proceed is going to kind of depend on what your current configuration is on your Bronco with skid plate or fuel tank straps and how you have it set up. So the way these came from the factory, you could have either had a factory gas tank skid, you could have had just the straps in place, both front and rear, holding your tank up and kind of leaving more of this exposed, or maybe you already installed the JCR gas tank skid. So basically what we need to do is loosen the tank and get it kind of down and off to the side just a little bit so we can access the two Torx head screws that hold this plate in place, since they run kind of from the center of the frame out and need to be removed, obviously the opposite direction. So in our case, since ours is already equipped with the JCR tank skid, basically what we need to do is just loosen all of the rear tank skid hardware, since ours is a two-piece skid, and we'll drop this out of the way. I'll support the back with either a strap or a jack to kind of hold the back side of the tank, and then I'll be able to slide that over enough to get the hardware out on this bracket. Those of you with the full factory Ford tank skid in place, that's where it's going to be the most involved, and you're going to probably have to loosen all of that tank skid hardware. Make sure you're supporting the front and rear of the tank with straps or jacks, and be able to kind of slide this whole thing to the side to get to the two bolts on that bracket. And then lastly, for those of you that have just the front and rear tank straps from Ford, it's probably going to be easiest because you should just have to remove the rear strap or even just loosen it. Again, make sure you're supporting the back of the tank, but that should give you enough movement and adjustability in the tank's position to kind of let it hang down just a little and slide it to the side. So with all that being said, for those of you that are not yet equipped with the JCR tank skid, this is going to be the best time to get that installed, since you're already in here loosening and potentially removing things. So I'll jump in here, get our rear section loosened and out of the way, and we can move forward. Now, for more information on how that rear tank skid section gets removed and the hardware and tools included with that whole process, be sure to check out the product page and install video for that tank skid. So since I have it out of the way now, you can kind of see I'm able to maneuver and manipulate this tank a little bit, and that way I can push it over toward the driver's side and be able to get up in there with some tools to get those two screws removed. So the heads on these two screws use a Torx Plus style socket, pretty common on the rest of your Bronco. However, if you haven't picked one of these sets up, you can get away with the traditional Torx socket in these fasteners sometimes. You just got to be really careful that you're not going to strip those out. So make sure you have good engagement in that bolt head as you go to loosen those. Now these specifically use a Torx Plus 25. I have that here on a small 1/4 inch drive ratchet, and it pretty easily slides up in here and gets into the back one so that I can begin removing that. So then up here on the front one, it's still just a little bit too tight to get that Torx socket in there with the ratchet. So I could move up front, loosen up the front half of the tank skid just a little bit and try and manipulate this tank a little bit further. But something you can also do is find a 1/4 inch wrench, slide that over the bit side of your socket, and that should allow me to get this up in here and be able to use the wrench to turn this socket. And that works pretty well up in these tight places. It's just going to be a little more tedious, especially because this is not a ratcheting wrench, to sit here and do this kind of a 1/4 turn at a time until you can loosen the bolt by hand. Then once you get that last screw removed, this should just slide out of there nice and easy and can be discarded because we're not putting that back in place. So now you can grab your lower control arm skid and kind of start sliding it up into place, get it over that factory control arm bolt, and then just kind of pivot it up in line with this factory threaded hole. For that, we give you an M12 bolt to thread into place, and kind of start holding that for now. So obviously you can kind of see we've got a few different accessories all stacked up here on this same bolt location, and that's fine. It's just a matter of making sure you get them installed correctly. So if you're running the JCR sliders or any other slider that mounts in this location, you'll want to make sure that's tight to the frame first, followed by the LCA skid, and then the fuel tank bracket. Now that is going to be the same if you're running the factory Ford fuel tank skid still. You'll want to make sure you get that loosened up and pulled down so that it is underneath our new LCA skid as well. Once you have this front bolt holding that kind of loosely in place, find one of the 3/8 hex bolts with a washer in your bolt pack along with the 3/8 flange locking nut. That you can kind of slide in here just above the rear lower control arm, and then through that back hole begin threading the bolt in place. So now you can move to the inside here between the frame and the tank. You'll need to find your nut tab along with a 3/8 bolt and washer. Basically this nut tab is going to slide up here underneath the control arm, and then you'll have to kind of manipulate it and get it up alongside of the frame here so that you can line it up and thread the bolt in this location. Then once all your fasteners are in place, you can begin tightening things up. So your 2 3/8 bolts will just be a 9/16 wrench. So then same thing back here to tighten this one up. And then for this front bolt, it'll just be a 16mm socket. However, I'm gonna wait to tighten that back up until we get the rear skid section back in place on this tank so that I have all the adjustability needed here. So then once you do get that in place, you can go ahead and tighten this one up. So then over here on the driver's side, there's really just one main difference. I did want to kind of show you, now that there's a little more visibility, just where you're going with that nut tab. You can kind of see when you're fishing that up through exactly what you're trying to access and where you're trying to get it to. And then the actual difference is going to come up here with the front mounting bolt. Over here on the driver's side, there is not a factory threaded hole. So this one you will have to center punch, drill, and install our 1/2" self-threading bolt. Now the best way to do that is basically you'll place the skid up here on the frame, you'll install both the inside and outside 3/8 fasteners, and that'll kind of locate the skid. You can even kind of lightly snug them up. Just make sure that this is pushed up tight to the frame at that time. And then using the skid as a guide, you can center punch and drill that hole out to 7/16 to accept that 1/2" self-tapper. Now at this point, your installation is complete. If you guys have any questions at all about this product or anything else we offer here at JCR Off-Road, feel free to reach out to us. You can always call us at 269-353-1184 or shoot us an email at info@jcroffroad.com.